It doesn't matter if there's another war happening. It doesn't matter what's going on in the stock market or any of that volatility. If I have a percentage of my net worth that's tied to an asset like real estate that has four walls, that has a roof, it's in the real world and it can make a profit, then it doesn't matter what else is going on as long as that property is performing.
This is Brandon Turner, and you are listening to the Average Joe Finances podcast.
If you're watching this on YouTube, make sure you smash the like and subscribe buttons. If you're listening to our podcast, go leave us a 5-star review. All of our links can be found in the video description or show notes below. Hey, welcome back to the Average Joe Finances podcast. I'm your host, Mike Cavagioni, and today's guest is Jim Manning. So Jim, super excited to have you on the show. We talked quite a bit before we hit the record button. I know you're out there in St. Louis, and I'm going to be out there this March, so I'm looking forward to linking up with you, hopefully in a couple months. But dude, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me. And thanks for your service, by the way. 20 years in the Navy. That's incredible. I really appreciate that you have done that for the country.
Thank you. I appreciate that. It was a good ride. It was a good career. I enjoyed it. And yeah, now I'm living the civilian life and growing a beard and just sticking with real estate. So life's good. So
absolutely.
Hey, so Jim, I want to start this off the same way I start every podcast episode. And me and my audience would love to know more about you. So if you could, can you tell me a little bit about yourself and share your story with us? Who is Jim Manning?
Who is Jim Manning? Wow. Okay, let's get.
I know,
into
loaded
this.
question right off the bat.
Yeah. So I'll be 40.
What have you
in
gotten yourself
February
into?
here. I'm an Aquarius. No, just joking there. But I'm from a middle class family. My mom was a teacher, and my dad was an IT professional. And when I graduated college was 2006. And I was looking for something to do. And I decided to start reading some Warren Buffett books and on investing. And I really fell in love with the idea of real estate because if I did a really good job, I could make a lot of money. And at the same time, if I fixed up a property that needed repairs, I was improving that little piece of the world and I was making a home for a family. So you could call me like a pragmatic altruist almost. And my first corporate America job, it was as if like leeches were attached to my neck, just slowly draining my lifeblood out of me. So I knew I needed something more entrepreneurial. And I had an experience being an entrepreneur. I was working for a small business owner that had us on a wine trip. And we were working for a self-made billionaire on this wine trip. And all we were doing was we were labeling wine. And it took us 2 full weeks to take out a bottle of wine in this billionaire's collection, put a label on it, and put it back in. And we were doing it so he could get insurance on his wine because he had so much. At one point, I had $200,000 of wine in my hands. So that was the type of wealth that this guy had. And so I saw that. And I was like, wow, this guy used to be a small business owner. He started a trucking company and he just happened to grow it into the largest trucking company in the United States. And then I was just out of college and I was like, wow. And I met his girlfriend and I was in great shape. I had just got done playing a college sport. And I remember looking at his girlfriend and I'm like, this girl's half his age. She's better looking than any girl I've even thought about like hanging out with. And this guy's wider than he is tall. I'm like, man, America's great. This entrepreneurship thing could be a really good experience. And so that kind of gave me like a little bit of the itch right away, like seeing what a body of work, what a 30-year run of being a small business owner can do for somebody. And I ended up doing a good enough job that he invited me to Thanksgiving dinner with his family. And I remember thinking, man, this might lead to a job opportunity. This might lead somewhere. And within a couple of minutes of being there, I realized that the help was there, that I was there because his wife hated him and his 2 daughters hated him at the same time. And as the onion peeled back, this guy, that 22-year-old Jim, started out idolizing, I ended up realizing, wow, this guy's miserable. He's just not happy at all. And what yes, he gained the pinnacle of business achievement, but at the same time, he lost everything in the process. And it was like a huge experience, a transformative experience in my life, because like what it taught me was that success can be measured by, should be measured by what we gave up to get it. And so on one hand, I became motivated. Hey, I want to be this entrepreneur. But on the other hand, I was like, okay, I need to do it and find a vehicle to allow me to do it where I don't give up my family. I don't give up my relationship. I don't give up my lifelong friends. And then I ended up stumbling upon real estate, and goodness, 2007, I got in full time, and it took me about 18 months to do my first deal. And yeah, there's a lot of fear there. There's a lot of anxiety and anxiousness there because I wasn't born with a silver spoon in my mouth. I had to break through a lot of that fear. And once I did that, I was able to quit I made $10,000. My business partner made 10,000. And so I had $10,000 in my bank account. I'm like, hey, I'm rich. I'm going to start my own business. So then I started it, and we got going on short sales, because short sales was the market back in 2007. Then the rest is history. We were closing in on our 4,000th deal as a team. Fast forward to 2023. So it's been quite a ride, Mike.
Yeah, Jim, what a background. So I'm sitting here taking notes as you're going, and just what an experience you got just learning from that self-made billionaire, right? You got to see both sides, right? You got to see hey, here's what he did, the success he had in business, and he's got all this money. And look, I'm sitting here labeling wine and looking at his girlfriend, who is super attractive and way out of like anyone's league, way out of his league. He had the money. And then you got to see the other side of that. What in that other side was his family despised him. And that a lot with people that come upon a lot of wealth, that tend to just focus on that instead of the actual things that are important to them, right? I always go back to, what is your why, right? Why are you doing what you do? Because if you're doing it for your family, don't lose them in the process of reaching your goals, right? So that actually leads me to the question I want to ask you, Jim, because I got a background of why you got into real estate, but I want to ask you personally, what is your why for doing what you do in real estate?
When you get to be in real estate as long as I've been in, so I've been in full time now, going on 17 years, my why has actually shifted and changed. It started out, I have a Jesuit education. And for those of you that have an experience with the Jesuits, they have a saying, for the greater glory of God. And that's the lens to look at things like, hey, let's do things for the greater glory of God. And when I got into my 20s, I was like, my why was, okay, I want to build a massively successful company. I want to be one of the biggest players in town, and do more flips than anybody else is doing in town. And I'm going to do it for the greater glory of God. Now, that was my programming since a high schooler. And what I realized within that was, it was not for the greater glory of God. It was actually for the greater glory of Jim and my ego, to say, hey, I did more deals than anyone else did. And we had a good run. At one point, we had 120 flips going at the same time. We were really successful, buying hundreds of homes a year for the better part of a decade, or for over a decade now, since we've scaled up. We started really scaling up around 2010, 2011, where we were doing hundreds of deals a year. And so then the interesting thing was, I was in the middle of it, and the way we were scaling and growing our business was, we were getting private individuals together. We were saying, hey, we need $200,000 for this deal. Will you lend us money to purchase it, and lend us repair money, so then we can do the flip? And we didn't necessarily have anything out of pocket. We were using other people's money to help us grow and scale the business. And I and so the why became, okay, let's do as many deals as we can. And then what was happening was, anytime we had a profit, we might make 30 or 40 grand on a deal. But if there was overages on a different project, we would take the profit and then just roll it into overages on the other property. So we were doing it. When you do property flips, you have to buy the property perfectly, You have to manage the rehab, not on time and in budget. You have to hope that the market doesn't shift and that you bought it, that is going to be worth what you think it is when you're done.
It's very
And
active. It's a lot of work.
it's a lot of work. There's a lot of activeness to it. And what happened to us when we were in our third or fourth year of scaling, we made three mistakes in a row. We bought a red barn. Looking back, it's goodness, this was like so obvious, but we bought a red barn and I priced it out as if it was the same price per square foot as a house that wasn't a red barn, that was like a normal ranch style house. And I guess when you're 25, 26 years old, however old I was at the time, I just got into thinking about, oh, this price per square foot and we should be okay. And then I wholesaled a property that we made really good money on, but the guy who flipped it sold it for another 70,000 than what we thought it was worth. And this house had a basement that was almost like a speakeasy. Like you would go down. I remember walking down, and the foundation was stone. It was a beautiful stone, and it was 20 feet of this beautiful stone. It was like really unique, really interesting, and really special. That property I just valued as the same price per square foot as just any other property. And then I ended up rehabbing a property that was at the bottom of a bowl. And if a property is in the bottom of a bowl, so to speak, the water only has one place to flow, no matter if it's in the front yard or backyard, it all has to flow to the house. And so there was a massive water issues and foundation issues with the house we decided to rehab. And we didn't, and it's not that every problem has a solution. But we didn't factor that in, that, hey, a retail buyer is going to be a little bit scared by all the piering and all the foundation work that we had. So anyway, this is getting a little bit longer than it probably should, but we made three bad decisions in a row. And then we were sitting on the open market. The properties were just sitting there. And I was like, man, I need the red barn to sell because I have more of my own cash tied into this than the foundation properties, because then I'm going to take my cash and then pay off the loss I'm getting ready to take on the foundation. And I was really stressed out at the time because I had reinvested all the profits in the first couple of years of being in my business. And I ended up having a health issue. I ended up passing out, hitting my head really hard, and I had a severe concussion. And it was a Saturday. And I remember thinking, man, I don't know if I'm on my deathbed here. I don't know if I just was a little bit of a wimp and I passed out just because I got overwhelmed by all the stress of these deals. And my wife at the time was my girlfriend. She was sitting next to me in this uncomfortable chair. And I remember praying to God, and I said, hey, if the tests come back all negative and I end up okay, I'm going to do everything I can to get over these couple bad deals that I did, just to put a ring on her finger. I know I want to marry this girl. So my why shifted from, hey, let me do the most amount of deals that I can for me and my family, and to say that I did. Then it shifted to, hey, I just want to marry the love of my life. Here she is supporting me when I'm having this health thing. And then we were able to do it. We were able to overcome that difficulty. And it was about 12 months later, I put a ring on her finger. But then when the ring was on her finger, it was like, okay, that can't be my why continuing. I just succeeded at that goal. Now what? What's the next thing? What's the next mountain?
That's always the most important question, is now what?
Mm-hmm.
So
that's
yeah,
right.
no. So please continue. Sorry, I wanted to jump in because that as you're leading up to everything and I'm putting all these pieces together as you're sharing it, I'm just like, man, I could see why your why would change throughout the years with what you're trying to do with yourself. Of course, our goals are always going to change. Our why will change until you get to that ultimate spot where this is what I want to do now.
Yeah.
To live out the rest of my years.
Yeah. Yeah. So then the why became, okay, it was like, okay, I was able to, now I'm getting engaged. I'm married. Okay. Now I'm having a kid, and Maddie, I want to be able to support my family. And the why really transitioned into, okay, let's do these flips to then allow us to invest money into long-term buy and holds and to become financially free. So then it shifted to that. Okay. And so it was still very, in my 20s and early 30s, it was still very gym focused. And I did have the community element to it as well, but it was, the value for the community was, well, were improving this neglected property. It still wasn't like crazy focused on others. And then a couple years goes by and we hit the goal. We had enough real estate that we owned to be able to call it quits. And then things got a little stale. Is this all there is? I'm 30, I think I was 37 or 38 at the time, 38 years old. Is this all there is? I guess you could call it like a little bit of a midlife crisis. And then I had there's three things then going on at that point in my life. I'm searching for a new why. Okay. And if those of us that have ever searched for a new why, how painful it is. Because it's, man, why am I not as motivated as I used to be? Or like, I'm just binge watching a Netflix show. Like, I know there's more to life than this. And what was going on at a macro level in the market is we're in single family real estate, we're in a housing crisis. There was 5 million houses that should have been built over the last decade that weren't. And Harvard did a study that basically says that we need through 2038, we need another 21 million houses to be built because the millennials and is it Gen Zs after the millennials? I think does that sound right? Gen Zs.
Yep.
The millennials and Gen Zs are the two biggest demographics in our nation, and they're in their peak home buying years. So we need all of these homes. So on a macro level, it's okay. There's a great buy and hold opportunity here. And then, that's my pragmatic entrepreneurial brain. And then I run into my now business partner, Jason. And Jason and I were in a mastermind group for a couple of years before we actually even did a single deal. We just were developing a friendship. And he kept talking about these lease purchase deals. And he kept saying, hey, it's way less risk than you guys do. And you make way more money than on these flips. So what are you guys doing? You guys are walking away from millions of dollars on the back end because you're doing these hundreds of flips a year. You're reselling them and you're not capturing all the cash flow. So he's hounding me for a couple of years on this at this point. And then finally I said, okay, Jason, you know what? Because I believe in you, you've been honest with me this whole time. Let's try this deal structure out. And he was really interested in us because we do a ton of deals. We've been able to scale and do tremendous volume. And he had the art, so to speak, and the strategy, and we had the ability to bring a fair amount of volume to it that he didn't have. And so we try it out, and lo and behold, I think it was the third deal we do. There was a bidding war on down payment money, and 10% down was a $300,000 house, was $30,000. And we got a $40,000 check before a tenant buyer ended up moving into the property. So now I'm thinking, okay, we have this $40,000 check, that's flip income, and the tenant's going to pay for all the repairs and maintenance. So that's actually a lower risk profile than being a traditional landlord, because some of the study that I've looked into, your repairs and maintenance can be around 20% of your operating income. I haven't verified that. It was a couple of reputable sources when I was looking through it. But anyways, then I was like, okay, this is cool. We can scale and do a bunch of deals like this and magnify. We're already financially free, but we can make that kind of the whole main thing.
But it's also giving that tenant like a sense of ownership, right? Because you're doing this lease option. Right. Of course, they're going to want to take better care of that property, right? So that's one of the things that's really going to help you out with those expenses.
That's
so
right.
This was like a lease to own, right?
That's right. And then the community benefit is, whoa, this person's winning at a high level. Like one of our first clients was a teacher in a domestic abuse situation. She was a teacher making great money, but her ex-husband was so controlling, she wasn't allowed to open up a credit card. No credit card means no credit score. It's hard to find a place to rent, much less own a home at that point.
Absolutely.
And so then we opened up the door to home ownership for this person. It was like, whoa, we're able to do a lot of good here. So if we can scale and do more deals, we're going to help more awesome people out like our client, and we're going to do some amazing things. And so we shifted our model a few years ago to that, and we started doing a fair amount of deals there. So that was the second thing. And then the third thing was I ran into one of my best friends in the world who's in his 70s. I'm a little bit different. I have some of my closest friends are older. They're around like my parents' age or in their 60s and 70s. Not sure why. I have some dear friends and some dear mentors that have poured into me over the years. And my friend confides in me. He says, hey, Jim, here's the deal. I'm afraid of running out of money before I die. And that took my breath away. I'm like, wait, aren't you a self-made millionaire? Yeah. It's like, well, what's going on? Why, how could you possibly be afraid? I'm 38 years old and I own enough real estate to where I'm okay. I don't have to worry about it if I don't want to. He said, I've invested into what the financial industry's told me to my whole life. Yeah, I'm a self-made millionaire, but it's all tied to the stock market and different index funds and bonds and all of that. And my net worth is right now it's down 20%. The market's going up and down crazy. And if I live to be 90, I'm fine. If I live to be 100, I don't know. When it's been on my bucket list to go to Europe. And I don't know if I should go or can go right now because I don't know if I'm going to have money. And I'd love to leave money behind for the next generation too. That's probably out the window by the time everything's said and done. So then like my mind started shifting. I was like, okay, we've developed this really high return, low risk model. Um, when we do a scale and we do a tremendous amount of deals, we're limited on what we can afford on our own. So it was like pragmatically, if we open up a fund structure and allow people like my friend to invest with our team, we can do as many deals as we possibly can. And we're only really limited to the deals we can find, the money that the people that want to invest with our team can do. And so this was over the last couple of years, this is what was going on. And then so now the why has really shifted towards if I can leave a legacy of time and treasure for other people and really help them with a foundation of real estate and all the benefits that come with real estate investing without all of the downside of all the work that comes with real estate, I'll feel pretty good about the legacy that I live behind. And here's the other cool thing. The community is winning at a huge level. I'm winning at a huge level because I'm able to do more deals too. And then our investors are winning at a huge level too. And it's been a blessing. It's been a wild ride. And our ultimate goal is right now we're in St. Louis and we like to develop things out to offer this opportunity to really anybody that wants it. We're right now the team's limited compared to the amount of capital out there and the amount of deals we can do, but we're looking to grow this into multiple cities and everything like that and offer this up to anybody that has some money to invest, but they don't have the time.
Yeah. No, Jim, that's wow. I mean, that your why has shifted quite a bit over the years, but it's completely understandable as you share your stories as to your reasons why it has shifted. But one of the things that's really sticking with me is your older friend that was worried about they have enough money to make it to the end. And because it sounds like they did what is supposed to be the standard American dream, which is funny because the acronym for that is SAD, right? Standard American Dream, SAD. They followed what they were supposed to do. They invested in index funds and their 401k, and they were in the stock market, and they're on a withdrawal plan to make sure that they'll have enough money to last them. They're withdrawing their 4% or whatever it might be.
Yeah.
But what isn't accounted for in doing that standard American dream is the inflation that we've had, right? We have not had standard inflation. Prices have skyrocketed, but what hasn't skyrocketed is the back end, people's income, the stock market. Again, it's up and down, right?
Yeah.
So how do you mitigate things like that? And you do that through alternative investments like real estate, right? Because real estate holds its value. It fluctuates too, but realistically, like if you're buying a piece of property and you're going to hold it for 30 years, you're going to always look like a genius no matter what. And being able to get into real estate, getting your foot through the door there, and starting up a fund is a great way to allow other people to set their foot in the door on real estate that otherwise might not be able to get into it, or they don't have the time to go out and do research and find these deals. For me as a real estate syndicator, right, as being a limited partner on deals, right, what's one of the great things. It's similar, right, to a fund, right? But I had this other team that went out, found a great deal and did all the work. And I just said, here's my money. And then I get monthly returns. I get a tax break because I own that piece of real estate. And when the asset sells, I get a nice chunk of change on the back end. And all in all, it's a really nice annual rate of return when it's all said and done compared to the stock market, whereas generally will stay about 10%, right? And in these real estate syndications, I'm getting upwards of 17 to 22%, which has been awesome. So there's so many different ways to get into real estate, but real estate funds are also another great way for somebody to get their foot in the door.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah, I actually at one point was looking at starting one myself, but for me, it's just I got too many other things going on. I don't have the time to do it. You have a full team, right? So that's definitely a big thing is who do you have in your corner that's helping you with this stuff? And actually, that's
Right.
one of the things I want to ask you, Jim, too. Like when it comes to finding deals, like what kind of markets do you like to specifically look in, especially when it comes to finding deals for your fund?
Yeah, so our model with the lease purchase model is our average price point's $260,000. So in St. Louis, Missouri, a Midwestern town, our average price point is lower than what the coasts are. And so 260 gets you a really solid middle class neighborhood, quality school districts, and
And
the
you're talking about
numbers.
right now in the 2023, soon to be 2024 market?
Mhm. Yeah.
Wow, awesome.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's a really, we have an affordable market still. And with it being a housing shortage, we're just trying to buy and hold on to as much as we can right now because for one, they can't in the areas we're buying in, they can't build them for 260 anymore. It would be more like 400. And it's just it's a really good opportunity to cash flow some real estate and make some passive income and have that foundation set up. And I'm more of a passive income investor personally. And if you think about it, retirement's not a nest egg problem. It's not, do you have 10 million or 5 million or 100 million in your nest egg? Retirement's a cash flow problem. It's if
Yeah,
you're making, if you need 10,000 bucks a month to live and you have $10,000 a month of passive income coming in, you can retire if you want at that point.
absolutely.
And I don't, the open market, like I think, and this isn't bad mouthing like financial advisors, there's a world-class financial advisors, and there's a lot of people that have made a tremendous wealth in the stock market too. It's a great investment opportunity. It's a great wealth building opportunity. But what I'm talking about is your foundation for your retirement. And normally in recessions, we sell more beer, don't we? People in recessionary environment, they like to drink a little more because there's a little bit more stress going on. Last year, Anheuser-Busch had a social media post. I think Dylan was his name. That was maybe a transgender individual that's, hey, here's Bud Light. I'm promoting this product. And the internet went crazy over it. Like, how could Bud Light do that? And how dare them? And but they stopped serving Bud Light at bars. And it went all the way to a couple $1 billion loss, a 40% dip in Anheuser-Busch's even market valuation. And it started with one social media post. So, yes, you can make a tremendous amount of money in the stock market, but when we're talking about retirement, when we're talking about having more certainty because you don't have income to offset or to overcome any sort of short-term volatility, man, I don't know. Like the world didn't used to be like this, guys.
Yeah.
10,
No,
15,
so
20 years
Jim,
ago, there
to that
wasn't one
point,
post that could cause billions of dollars of loss with from a blue chip,
yeah.
one of the top companies to invest in over the last 30, 40 years.
No, so to that point, Jim, I've talked about that several times, both on this podcast and podcasts I've been a guest on, that when you talk about risk, there's always risk in every investment. But when it comes to the stock market, that's one of the reasons why I like when I'm in it, I like to be diversified. But can you imagine if you were all in on Anheuser-Busch and when that happened, you just lost 40% of your portfolio if you did that. So that's why I tell people too, you got to be careful no matter what you go into and just pay attention, right? Because you can get into an amazing company that's doing really well. We could take Apple, right? Let's say you have
Mhm.
everything in Apple, and then a new CEO comes in and makes one bad decision and you just watch your profits tank. So same thing, like that's a real world example right there. One social media post equivalated to a billions of dollars in revenue lost. And that's the things that people need to have in the back of their head with
That's
whatever you're
right.
investing in. And that's one of the reasons why I'm a big fan of real estate, right? There's there are things that influence it, right? But real estate markets are real estate markets. Like it's not going to be like, okay, somebody in the real estate market made a bad decision. Now all the property values have gone down, right? It takes a lot to see these
Y-
fluctuations in real estate, right? It's a
yeah,
lot.
it's
There's a lot more that you have to do to have that
I
kind of impact.
so I mentioned that I was really researching and studying investing, and I read 4 or 5 Buffett books. So it was either like the financial industry or real estate, like when I started out my career. And I remember I invested into Apple stock and I read a report that said, Apple's never made more money in the history of its company. Amazing. And I remember thinking, man, I just put like a couple of grand into Apple. This is awesome news. And then the stock price went down. I remember thinking, like, what is going on here? How is it possible? It just made more money than it's ever made in its history. It went down because people thought it was going to make a little more than it did. And it had nothing to do with just the normal business principle of make money. It had to do with how do other people perceive what's happening here? And is that
Yep.
perception in line with the
Yep.
price? It's a whole extra layer of complexity that I, for one, wanted to at least have a foundation set up for my retirement that completely takes that out of it. It doesn't matter if there's another war happening. It doesn't matter what's going on in the stock market or any of that volatility. If I have a percentage of my net worth that's tied to an asset like real estate that has four walls, that has a roof, it's in the real world and it can make a profit, then it doesn't matter what else is going on as long as that property is performing. And
Yeah, it's something that's tangible. It's something you can go out and touch. You can buy all the stocks you want in the world. You can't actually go out there and physically touch them. You could back in like the 30s and 40s when they actually had paper stock notes that you would actually purchase, but that is not the case now. And I like to be able to know that what I'm buying is something I can go out and reach and grab and touch. I think that's important. But again, I still invest in the stock market. I just don't have 100% of my net worth there, right? Majority of my net worth is in real estate.
Yes. Yeah. And so my philosophy, what's worked for me, and I've been able to, I have enough now that I can be retired at be 40 in a couple months here. What's worked for me is I want to get a foundation of real estate first. And then once that's set up, now I can invest in my opinion, higher risk profile stuff like a stock market. I put some money into a pharmaceutical company that could go belly up, or it could give me a 10,000x return. But if it goes belly up, I don't care because I already have my foundation in place with real estate. And it does get a little bit challenging because there's different, just in real estate alone, you can completely diversify. There's B&B vacation rentals, there's apartment complexes, there's commercial office space, there's single family real estate as well. And there's all across the board, there's different risk profiles on the strategies that you do as well. So it's helpful to know how to assess what adds in risk in real estate and what de-risks it, what lowers the risk profile.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, Jim. So I think we've got some really great talking points here. I feel like I was able to learn a lot about why you do what you do and why your strategies changed over the years, going from flipping to this buy and hold method through leases to now having a fund so you can expand even further with that. It's just been a pretty amazing journey, right? And you said you started about 17 years ago. It just goes to show that you can be flexible and change what it is that you're doing in real estate and still come out and be successful, right? It's not, you didn't change because you had to, you changed because you wanted a little bit more sustainability, something more steady, right? And something that's going to keep you more comfortable with that key word that you had mentioned earlier, which is cash flow, right? A lot of people seem to forget about that. Cash flow is the most important piece of investing in real estate because that's what's actually going to make you retire. Not the value of the home. It's going to be the actual cash flow, right? What is it giving you every month? Is it covering the necessary expenses you need it to cover so you can live comfortably? So with that being said, Jim, I would like to transition this into what I call the final round. It's where I'm going to ask you the same four questions I ask everybody that comes on the show. It helps give us a good idea of how you are under a little bit of pressure, which we've already got to experience some of that. So I'm excited to see what kind of answers we get here. But if you're ready to go, we'll
You
get
got
that
me
party
nervous
started.
now. All right, let's see what happens.
All right, don't be too nervous. It's not that bad. It's not that bad. Okay. You already talked about some of these, but I want to know which one is the biggest because this question is, what's the biggest mistake you've ever made when it comes to your finance or business life?
Wow, the biggest mistake. I'll just go the finance route. When we were it was 2009, and in the 2009 market, you could buy on the multiple listing service. You have to get too fancy with finding properties. You could buy a nice cash flowing rental property on the market and give them 100% of asking price. Like the finding of the deal wasn't really that difficult. And I remember my business partner and I talked about, hey, should we just buy and hold on to a bunch of stuff right now? And we were like, I don't know. I don't think we can afford it. And so then we were like, okay, let's keep doing like the flips because that's how we're going to generate the nest egg to then buy and hold on to real estate. And because we were doing it from 2009 to all the way to fast forward to today, there's been several properties we flipped and maybe we made 30 or 40 grand on them that have then 4 or 5 years later have then resold where another 40, 50, $60,000 has been made. So we're like, holy cow, there's properties coming back and the homeowner that bought it from us is making more money on these deals than what we did on the flip. And so what stopped us was the money thing. And unfortunately, money shouldn't ever stop someone from investing in real estate. If you don't have treasure, someone else does. What we ended up, just weren't resourceful enough. So rather than stopping, because like Jim and Ryan was the co-founder with me, Ryan Wessels, because Jim and Ryan didn't have enough money to buy and hold on to all these real estates. All we needed was a money partner to pay for it, and we could do all of the work, right? So had we done that, yeah, my net worth would be double what it is today. And I'm very blessed. I'm in an amazing spot and I'm very much happy with where we're at and what we have going on. But from just a business financial standpoint, that was a mistake.
Yeah. No, that's a very common thing you hear too. If I would have known what I know now back then, I could have doubled or tripled my net worth. It's fine because these are the necessary lessons that we need to learn to get better at our craft and to get better at what we're doing, to start building that legacy. So, of course, yeah, if you had the cheat code, of course it'd be easy, but you got to go through that learning experience. You got to go through the pain. So, one of the things I talk about a lot with real estate is you're going to get an education regardless, right? You can go out there and learn it from somebody that's been there and done it and pay them, or you're going to pay for it yourself when you go out there and experience it yourself and you make those mistakes and you realize that you just pretty much paid for a master's degree, especially when those mistakes start costing upwards in the six figures. So you just paid for a graduate school of real estate. But yeah,
That's right.
that's awesome, Jim. I mean, I'm not awesome that you had to go through that, but it's awesome with the lessons learned that you were able to make the changes you needed to make. And with that being said, the next question ties into that. And that is, what is something that you've learned that you wish you knew when you first started out?
Something that I've learned that I wish I knew. I didn't truly know how to delegate. Oh gosh, there's a monkey article that Harvard wrote where it talks about whose back the monkey's on. And so if you're a manager and you give a task to someone, if you know how to delegate properly, you put the monkey on that individual, that other person's back. The way I would delegate it, I would say something like, hey, Mike, could you get me this report by Thursday? And I tell you what, if you run into any sort of issue at all, just come let me know. Let me help you. Come back and let me help you. And I thought I was being like a good manager or a good boss, but basically what I was doing was rather than putting the monkey on your back, Mike, I was keeping the monkey on my back. So then if the report didn't get done by Thursday, it all came back to me and it was my responsibility. So I've really had to get much more intentional when I work with team members to fully put it on as their responsibility. And yes, I'm here to empower, I'm here to help, but I need to do it in a way that doesn't that puts them in charge of that piece of the pie or of that piece of the puzzle. And yeah, that really that held me back for a number of years because then everything was still circling around what I could do, or I was the bottleneck in a lot of cases, right? Rather than letting the team take it and build something special with us.
Yeah, no, that's a great point and a great lesson, right? Great things to learn there, especially when it comes to growth, right? Because you're not going to get better, you're not going to get stronger without learning the way that you learn. Okay, this next question, again, these all kind of tie into each other, Jim. This is for the person that's just starting out, right? Do you have any tips or tricks that you would recommend to someone that is just getting started today?
Yeah, when I look back at me, what held me, so I've found that there's two different types of people. There's an action doer that doesn't really want to study, that just wants to go out and get a little dirty. And then there's a studier that doesn't want to do anything. So it took me 18 months to do my first deal because I was studying a bunch. I bought several courses. I was studying. The problem is that education without implementation is just entertainment. And it was going in one ear and going out the other because then I wasn't using any of it. And if I look back at myself, what I was really saying was that I was scared and I was procrastinating, but I was using the guise of, well, I need to learn more about it. I need to study it more, which was really just a cop out. And I was afraid. So for people that are hardwired like me, uh, get others around you that are actively doing it, that you can trust to run things by, and then get a little bit dirty. Now, I have seen people on the other side of the spectrum that will just go out and mess a bunch of stuff out and learn as they go. If you're more in that side of the spectrum, get a course, get a mentor, and do both at the same time. So the middle path is really the best, where you're studying and doing, you're studying and you're doing, you're studying and you're doing, where you're pulling off both, not just one or the other. And I have some friends that are no longer investors because they're off the gates. It was like, man, they're on their sixth flip in their first year. That's incredible. I only did one. And they're not around anymore because they made some mistakes that they could have really just asked me. I would have helped them not make that mistake, but maybe their ego blinded them, and they didn't want to ask for help.
Yeah.
So I would really say that. And then the buy and hold, like the lease purchase deals that we're doing. And if you don't have any money, there's all sorts of creative financing structures you can do too, to be able to build a rental portfolio without any of your own cash as well.
Yeah, no, what I was going to say, Jim, is it's funny the way that you describe those different kinds of people, because one of the things I talk about a lot is I have these four pillars to building wealth, but it's really four pillars to anything, right? And it's the first pillar is education. The next one is networking. The next one is coaching and mentorship. And the final one is taking action. Actually, I might have mixed networking and coaching and mentorship up, but either way,
Yeah.
those three pillars mean nothing if you don't do that fourth one, which is taking action. Like you said, all this learning and education without taking action it just becomes entertainment.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I feel
for
like a
me-
lot of people get stuck in that.
And looking back too, I didn't even want, this is how bad I was, like how insecure I was. I didn't want to go to any meetups as like the brand new newbie and admit that I didn't know anything. I wanted to like study and go in and provide value. Well, come on. If I study for a couple of years and I've only done one deal, I'm not going to be able to provide that much value anyway. But it was also an ego. It was like a guy thing, or I think an ego thing at that point too. Like I just didn't want to admit that I didn't know. And that really hurt me. It really held me back. Years of development that I could have been further ahead.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great point. You could be the new guy. You can bring value to the table. Anybody can bring value to the table, right? It's all about what you do, what your skill set is. I know people that have done one deal that have gone out and at meetups and they are the light of the party, right? Because they are just charismatic or whatever it might be. But Guess what? After that meetup, they got into their next couple deals with people that they met there. Why? Because it's how you present yourself. It's the effort you put into it, right? So even if you are the new person, even if you've never done a deal before, I encourage you to go to these meetups, meet other real estate investors, meet people doing the things that you want to do and learn from them, right? That's a great place to find a mentor or a coach. Okay.
That's right.
But Jim, the final question of the final round, and this is completely different than all the rest of them. Do you have a favorite business, investing, or real estate related book or podcast or both?
So as far as some of my favorite books go, Good to Great by Jim Collins, Pumpkin Plan by Michael, oh my gosh, Michalowicz, or he's the same guy that wrote Profit First.
Mike Michalowicz, yep.
Michalowicz. Okay. I always mess his name up. There's a book called Relentless Solution Focus. That's fantastic. That's really heavy on mindset and how do you overcome obstacles. Those three are fantastic. Right now, I'm reading a book I think it's called Be Useful by Arnold Schwarzenegger. That's been really fun. That book just came out here recently. Arnold. And he is just so impressive because there's not many people that have hit the pinnacle of success in multiple arenas. He was a world-class bodybuilder. He was the highest paid actor, and then a governor. I consider that, I guess that's not president, but because he's an immigrant, he can't be president. He can only be governor. That's the highest he can get. And
Yeah, I think that's where Dwayne Johnson might be able to pass him up.
that's right.
He might be
That's
able to make
right.
it up to president one day.
Yeah, so that's been really fun, like listening to how he thinks, and like he used the same principles to master and to achieve the pinnacle of success in each one. So that's been a lot of fun
That's
of
awesome.
reading that one as well.
What's the name of that book?
I think it's called Be Useful.
Okay, I'm gonna have to
Yeah,
look
it
that
just
one up.
came out here
Add that to
recently. Be Useful, Arnold Schwarzenegger.
I'll just write down Arnold. I'll know who that is.
Oh no.
All right. Awesome.
Yeah,
Hey,
absolutely.
Jim, thank you so much. You made it through the final round. You can pat yourself on the back. It wasn't that hard, right? Not too difficult. But with that being said, I do have another question I have to ask you. Okay, Jim, and this question is the most important question of the entire podcast because you shared a lot of great information for the audience today, right? Sharing your background, why your why has changed and how it's changed over the years, and the lessons learned and the story that we got to hear from that, right? Resonated with me and it probably resonated with a lot of people in my audience. So they're wondering right now, where can I find more information about Jim? So that's the question I have for you. Where can we find more information about you? You have a website you could share with us, any social media
Absolutely.
profiles we could follow,
Yeah.
anything like that.
Yeah, so I bought a URL that's my name. So it's jimmanning.com. And it's just like Peyton Manning without the athletic ability. So Jim, MANING.com. And that'll take you to some free resources that I have available that I've done. I have a resource on generating passive income. I go into some creative financing structures and some strategies that I think it was in 2022, it was around $5 million of passive income that was generated. We've helped a person sell her property and make over $40,000 in passive income after she sold it. So that's in that course. I have a free course that's about investing into your first real estate fund. That's a step-by-step process. It's really perfect for both of those courses are perfect for those of you that are like me that are researchers. On this URL, there's information on our real estate fund that we have. If you just want to talk to us and look into our fund investment opportunity, you can find that. And then I also did a white paper that talks about why institutional buyers, why these hedge funds are looking to buy up 40% of single family homes by 2030. And I go into the data and what's happening on a macro level to the real estate market. So I have all those resources on jimmanning.com. And yeah, you'll be able to, if you just want to talk as well, you'll be able to find a link on there to talk to us as well. And we don't, like we do a lot of deals and sometimes there's availability to invest with us, sometimes there's not, just depending on the deal. But I wanted to create these resources to provide value to you guys and to help you guys regardless if we have something available or not, because the more people I can help that were like my friend and help get into alternative investing, whether it's with us or not, the better, because I really believe in investing into real estate funds and generating passive income. I can only imagine what would happen if the world had a bunch of financially free real estate investors walking around when you still had time and energy to do good for the world. And so anyway, so there's a lot of great resources on that website, jimmanning.com.
Awesome. Hey, so I'll make sure we have that in the show notes to make it easy for our listeners to go ahead and check it out and check out your website, your courses, and learn a little bit more about you. For my listeners, you guys know the drill. If you're driving right now, please wait till you're in a safe place to go ahead and copy and paste and click away. Because the last thing I want is something to happen to you because you were listening to this amazing episode while you were driving. So, Jim, this has been an absolute pleasure, a treat for me. Thank you so much for taking the time out of the day today to have this conversation with me and our audience. I genuinely appreciate it.
Thanks, Mike. Thanks for having me on.
Awesome, Jim. You're a rock star. And also, I want to thank all of my listeners. I want to thank you all so very much for joining me and our special guest, Jim Manning, on the Average Joe Finances podcast. Go leave us a 5-star review and tell us what you liked about today's episode with Jim. Aloha from Hawaii and have a great rest of your day. Thank you for making it to the end of this episode. Greatly appreciate you being here with me today on the Average Joe Finances podcast. If you haven't done so yet, make this the episode that you go leave us a 5-star rating or subscribe to our YouTube channel. The Average Joe Finances podcast is for informational and entertainment purposes only. Have an outstanding day.